China does not use a phonetic alphabet.
You get the equipment, I'll send the messages. On second thoughts, you type.
So have you ever thought about when a Western brand name is translated into Chinese, what are they actually saying? Does it sound like the name of the brand in English or something else? And what about the meaning? Well, when Western brands enter China, they need to think of a Chinese name using Chinese characters and sounds. And this goes for names of people too. It is weird and inconvenient to keep saying English names in the middle of Chinese sentences, as John Cena demonstrates.
你好，我是 John Cena. 他是我的朋友 Jimmy Fallon.
Actually, that whole thing was just weird. But you get my point. It is easier to keep in the same language rather than having to switch back and forth each time you want to say the name of your foreign language exchange friend or your favorite American soda. And coming up with Chinese names for Western products and brands has become big business in China. The New York Times has an article where they interview representatives of several consultancy companies in China that do just that, help foreign companies come up with Chinese names. Actually, some Chinese people in the West could really do with help coming up with their English name too. I've met people called Cloud, Cactus, Shimmery. Like, you can't just use any word as a name, guys, all right? It doesn't work like that in English. But anyway, in this video, I want to go through the art and science of choosing a Chinese name for your product or company. This is Translating Western Brand Names into Chinese Explained. So there are three main ways of choosing a Chinese name for a Western brand. The first one is that you simply use phonetic sounds that end up sounding like gibberish but can convey the sound of an English name. For example, Hilton is Xi Er Dun, which really doesn't mean anything. Xi is hope. Er can be a pronoun in literary Chinese, so like thou in Old English, and dun means a pause or it's a measure word for meals. Xi Er is used as a translation for the last name, Hill, and then they added dun on the end, so it's Hill Tun. Xi Er Dun. Rolls-Royce is another one where it's translated phonetically with no real meaning. The company calls itself 劳斯莱斯, labor, this, name of a plant, this. It really means nothing in Chinese, and actually in English it doesn't sound too great either, to be honest. Laos, lice. But 劳斯莱斯 is how they translate it phonetically, and there's actually a strategy to this. In the New York Times article, Monica Lee, the managing director of Brand Union, a consulting company in Beijing, says, if you go for phonetic sounds, everyone knows where you are from. You are immediately identified as a foreign brand. This may have advantages in certain industries like luxury products, for example, where being foreign may give something more prestige. So the more like gibberish the name sounds, the more high-end something is. This is Chinese logic, guys. It makes perfect sense to me. I've been around this stuff a long time, but if you think it doesn't, you have to just trust me. Let's now look at the second way that they pick brand names, and this one is clever. So the second way they pick brand names in Chinese is trying to keep a similar sound to the original name, and in addition to that, adding some meaning in Chinese. This is probably the most interesting and clever way when it is done right. And the Chinese name for the Western brand that is widely regarded as the most successful ever is that of Coca-Cola. 可口可乐. Not only does it sound pretty similar to Coca-Cola, but it also means something. So the first character means can, not can as in a can of Coke, but can do, all right, to be able to do something. The second means mouth, all right, so can mouth. What does that mean? Can mouth, can take into the mouth, can drink, okay? It's drinkable or edible, actually. So 可口 is normally translated as tasty. And then 可乐, well, 可 is can, again, and 乐 is entertainment or enjoyment, so can be enjoyed, all right? It means enjoyable or simply fun. So together, 可口可乐, tasty, fun. And to be honest, what could be a more accurate description? Whenever there is fun, there's always Coca-Cola. Just make sure mine's a Mexican Coke. Anyway, Coca-Cola first entered the Chinese market in 1927, and it was originally known as 可可肯辣, which, listen to this, it means tadpoles gnawing on wax. Like, seriously, what? Was whatever Chinese person who helped them come up with that playing a practical joke? And unsurprisingly, they reported dismal sales. So they decided that they were done with phonetic-only translations, and in 1928 they offered a cash prize for someone to come up with a better name. A UK-based professor, originally from Shanghai, won the prize, which was 350 British pounds, and with inflation, that would equal about 28,000 pounds or $37,000 today. And the name that this professor came up with was 可口可乐. And yeah, like we said, to this day, this is still regarded in the advertising industry as one of the best translations to date. Another company that uses this method is BMW. Their Chinese name is Baoma, which means a prized horse or a prized steed. It not only preserves some of the sound of BMW in that the two characters start with B and M, okay, we lose W, but it's 2/3 there, but it also has a cool meaning. You may even use the word prized steed to refer to fast sports cars metaphorically when you're speaking in English. And in Chinese, Baoma has an even deeper meaning because it is the first half of the 4-character saying, 宝马香车, prized horses and fragrant carriages, which describes a luxury lifestyle. BMW in China used to be referred as 812, which is a phonetic translation of what the B stands for in BMW. Bayerische Motorenwerke. I don't know. Sorry guys, I'm butchering the name. But anyway, it kind of sounds like Bayer, right? 812. There's even a movie called 812, the 春节, or BMW's Spring Festival, which obviously uses the old name. But Baoma was a Hong Kong translation, and in 1992, when BMW cars were going to be marketed in China by a Swiss company, they chose to use that name, and it became the official translation adopted by BMW because they felt the name fit with the luxury lifestyle image of the brand. And just like in the West, how we sometimes joke that BMW stands for break my windows, a slang term for BMW in China is 别摸我, don't touch me, because I'm an expensive prize steed. Alright, let's now look at the third way that names are translated into Chinese. So the third way that Western names are translated into Chinese is to go for a good meaning, but make no effort to sound like the original English name. An example of this is Land Rover, which calls itself Luhu, or Road Tiger. Now, this one is interesting because originally they wanted to call it Luhu, and yeah, I know, that sounds exactly the same, but the first character, this one here, it's pronounced Lu, but it's a different character, it means land. And here you can see it on an old logo. So that would be Land Tiger, which is kind of close to the meaning of the original name if you imagine a tiger roaming or roving around a piece of land. But in the early 2000s, when Land Rover wanted to enter the Chinese market, they discovered that Geely Motors, a Chinese company, had already trademarked Luhu, or Land Tiger. They appealed, but they were unsuccessful. Geely considered using the name for a car, but in the end abandoned it, instead using the name for motorbikes. But Land Rover kept fighting, and in 2015, the trademark was finally awarded to them. However, this was just to protect their brand, so no one else could come out with a car with a name that sounded exactly the same as their name. In their branding, they still used Road Tiger. Luhu, with the first character meaning land, which is also a surname, is also the name of a Chinese singer called Tiger Lu, who looks kind of like a vampire. Yeah, I know, Asian aesthetic standards are different, but dude, you should really buy a Land Rover, take a trip out to the countryside or the beach, go get a suntan. Anyway, so with these names, it's all about the meaning. Another brand that emphasized the meaning while giving up sounding anything like the English is Clear Dandruff Shampoo. They did this because there were already so many Western-sounding shampoo brands. Remember, if you translate it phonetically with gibberish like 颗粒儿, Tadpole Power Boy, everyone will know that you're Western. So with this, they are taking the opposite strategy to Rolls-Royce and Hilton, and they translate the name as 清扬. Qing means clear, and yang means fluttering about or to be scattered about in the wind. So it kind of means clean and light. Or it could mean cleaning out the dandruff that would otherwise get scattered around from your hair in the wind. But no, I believe it is the former, all right? The New York Times interviewed a representative of the marketing company for this one, and they said, it's not about where this product comes from, it's about the benefit it can bring you. That's talking about playing down the Western origin. Then they went on to say, it's very light, healthy, and happy. Think of hair in the air. So those are the three main ways that Western brands have their names translated into Chinese. Are there any other considerations? Well, there are definitely some sounds that are best to avoid in Chinese. When Microsoft released their Bing search engine, there was no way that they would be able to call it Bing in the Chinese market, since although there are different meanings for the sound Bing and different tones and stuff, one of the most common ones is the character Bing, which means disease or to be sick. So they ended up translating it phonetically, but paying attention to the meaning as well, so using the second strategy that we talked about. They settled on the name Biying, which literally means will definitely respond, i.e., you will definitely get a response to your search query in the search engine. Another example of avoiding certain sounds is Mr. Muscle cleaning products. In Chinese, they translated it as 威猛先生, which actually means Mr. Powerful. So you can see that they've paid attention to using a good meaning without being exactly the same meaning as English, and without paying attention to sounding anything like English phonetically either. So they've used the third strategy. But why Mr. Powerful, not Mr. Muscle? Well, Mr. Muscle would be 肌肉先生. Now, 肌肉, it does mean muscle, but phonetically it sounds exactly the same as chicken meat, which is 鸡肉, a different first character, but exactly the same sound. So it would be Mr. Chicken Meat or Mr. Chicken. I think they were wise to go with Mr. Powerful instead. Alright guys, that is the video for today. Let me know in the comments any other Chinese translations of Western brands that you like. And we're all about promoting Chinese culture on this channel, and my favorite performing arts company that showcases traditional Chinese culture on stage is Shenyun Performing Arts. You can see myths and legends from Chinese history brought to life through classical Chinese dance. They are just about to start their 2026 world tour, and tickets for most cities are already on sale. Click the link down below to watch the trailer, and if you do go on to buy a ticket, use our code LCN2026 for a waived booking fee on all US show dates. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.